Are we live? I can't tell. Oh, there we are. It's up in the corner. I never can tell on this end when we're live. What's up, wrestling fans?
We're live. It's the Two Bros Wrestling Show, Doug. And we're talking tonight about Elimination Chamber. You know, we usually do these recap shows, but it's kind of strange. The pay-per-view's been over with for a little bit.
Yeah, well, going live in the middle of the day on a Saturday just did not seem right for this premium live event emanating from progressive Jeddah, Saudi Arabia.
Doug and I decided that working on a Saturday afternoon would be no audience for one, and so hopefully you all watched on replay like we did, but that is going to be our main event topic because it does set the stage for Wrestlemania coming up, and so we will give you our review, and in addition, we're going to talk a little bit about the ethics of the whole arrangement that WWE has with the country of Saudi Arabia and what these crown jewel events mean and what they maybe should be meaning. But Doug, it's been a little bit of an eventful week.
It has indeed been an eventful week with many things that could be our headline on a normal week, but
I know, and it's like, where in the world do you start? But I guess we start with Doug. You've been floating a theory around for the last few weeks on the Two Bros Wrestling Show about Cody Rhodes and the amazing work he's doing, fooling us all. And of course, because it's AEW and you're never wrong on these things, man, Cody is going next level with this work.
You know, when I first heard this news about Cody, I'm like, this falls in line with his gimmick, with the work he's doing. But then I realized that, you know, in Tony Khan's, you know, thank you, good night to Cody and Brandy, the tweet and press statement that was given, you know, he calls out the charity work and a lot of other things. And I'm like, I want to believe it's a work, but it's clearly not. It can't be a work, you know. For and if it is, I think it's in poor taste to you know start mentioning the charity work and all these other things. And I think it's also a huge risk, you know, canceling your show. The what is it, Road to Success or Road to the Top,
yeah,
whatever it is, that you know they're Being Bella's version that they have over on TBS or TNT, but no, it's not a work, man. I am in shock and dismay over this because I was thinking, yeah, all the way back to the Homelander getup, you know, that he always has, and the promos he's been doing where he's a heel that just doesn't know he's a heel, because I'm thinking this is a classic like DC Comics villain. I'm probably going to lose a lot of folks here. Hopefully, I'll keep some of you, but you know, I've always said, not always, but recently we've had these conversations where Cody is this classic like DC Comics villain, or even a Thanos type villain if we're looking at MCU, where he's the villain who thinks he's doing everything right for the right reasons and just doesn't understand why everybody else isn't behind him. And I thought that was great work, but
now we don't really get closure on that whole story. I loved where it was going, and then that's going to be one of those loose ends that will not get tied up because, folks, if you're not sure what we're talking about, we're in Bizarro world here. So in this very world where Vince McMahon fires his own son, Cody Rhodes, who had left Vince McMahon years ago as a co-founder of AEW, is apparently on his way back to Vince's arms. It's like, these are I think that this is some of the prophesizing of the end times, Doug. I'm pretty sure this is what this means.
You know, Cody,
the son-in-law would fall out of favor, and I mean, it's like, what in the world is going on?
Exactly. I mean, you know, Cody was wrestling Jesus for quite a while. I mean, you know, he early on he was the face of AEW. You know, the marketing machine. He and Brandy getting out there.
And Brandy too. Yeah, that's an important point to bring up, is that they are both no longer under contract to AEW, and Sports Illustrated, among many others, are confirming that Cody's next destination is going to be back where his career started in WWE, whereas multiple sources are saying that at least at this time, Brandy is not expected to follow. which is an interesting distinction. Of course, Cody, he began in WWE back actually here in Kentucky. He was in Ohio Valley Wrestling all the way back in 2006. And then about 10 years on, after a career in the mid card where he got stuck with a gimmick that was an offshoot of what his brother had done in the 90s, he left Vince out of creative frustration. And so he rebuilds himself on the indies, and then, Ring of Honor, and then saddles up next to Tony Khan, who he strikes a friendship with. So you got a wrestling mark in Khan, who also is a money man. Cody has contacts in the entertainment world, including back from the days of his father's long history in the Turner Ecoverse there, and I mean, it cannot be underestimated the importance of Cody in all of this happening that brought AEW to fruition. You just can't say he was just one of the guys that was there and had an idea, let's start a promotion. I mean, he was really an instrumental cog in the wheel.
I mean, and let's remember that, a single tweet literally started AEW with Meltzer talking to fans about him thinking that an indie show couldn't sell out, a 10,000 seat arena. And Cody tweets, okay, challenge accepted, Dave, and which led us to All In. And the rest is history there. That got Tony Khan's attention to see that something like that could be done. And that was Cody. And here it was Cody the Bucks. So I
mean, it really was Cody's relationships that leveraged this from being, an idea of let's do some big shows to we can make a alternative product.
Right.
But he not only followed his father's footsteps as a performer, he followed his father's footsteps as an important behind the scenes mind. And I mean, from the start was an executive vice president with AEW, and from all accounts had a hand in creative up until about a year ago. And so rumors have it that it, has nothing to do with money, but that Cody's exit is clearly tied to the fact that Tony sort of took full reign and had stopped so much listening to all of his lieutenants, and booking duties now are completely in the hand of Tony. And that led to some dissatisfaction amongst, Brandy and Cody. And so they left. But Doug, it's not like Cody's going to have creative freedom in WWE. He surely remembers that that's not the way the WWE empire works.
Exactly. I don't. I mean, all reports have him, other than those reports that had him in Poland over the weekend on his way to Saudi Arabia. All reports have him, at the Performance Center, maybe cutting promos and vignettes right now as we speak.
Obviously, it could be a difference maker as we enter the final stretch of WrestleMania season. I mean, it definitely gets fans a buzz that, pay attention to all the promotions and the inner workings of the business. You give him a high enough profile match, you have 50-ish days to build it. That's more than enough time to capitalize off that into something that people would hopefully pay for Peacock to see.
Yeah, I'm just not sure where this goes because, like you say, it's just a matter of time before we see, Goldust or Stardust or Ziggy, whatever he was, in WWE again. He's, I mean, and he knows this. It's just a matter of time before they take his last name, like they do with all other talent, or maybe they take his first name this time and he's just called Rhodes.
That does make you wonder just how, knowing that he knows it, how bad did the relationship actually get with Tony that maybe we haven't heard just yet? What the story is. Yeah. They were all saying the right things. They're corporate executives. They're thanking one another and, appreciate all your contributions and things. But the fact that these two couldn't sit down and hash it out in a way that would allow him to stay on says all you really need to know about where that relationship was at the end.
It'll all come out as it often does. I doubt he's going to be doing any Talk is Jericho podcasts.
I look forward to the Stone Cold Broken Skull sessions with Cody Rhodes that we can probably expect sometime later on this spring. Moving on, because there's a lot to talk about. This is a great segue because all indications are WrestleMania will include a match with none other than Stone Cold Steve Austin himself. How is this not the top story in all of wrestling? It only would happen in a week that something like has occurred with Cody. But Austin has famously said that he's had his last match. His knees are shot. His neck is messed up. He left, and finally got to a good place in his life where he was fine with it. I'm guessing a WrestleMania payday in the state of Texas where he lives is just too much to turn down. But for the first time in almost 20 years, when he had that last farewell match at WrestleMania with the Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin is apparently back in play, going to be on the card, and rumored to probably be facing Kevin Owens, although some are floating the idea of Goldberg, that 90s who would win dream match of the bald-headed guys in the black tights. But Doug, what do you think of this? This was another Bizarro World surprise.
This dropped earlier in the week, and I think Cody Rhodes said, "Yeah, hold my beer."
Yeah, right.
But because on any other week, Stone Cold returning to the ring, not just returning to WrestleMania to hit a stunner on some like B-list player and drink a beer and walk out. We're talking about a Stone Cold match at WrestleMania in 2022.
And as we've learned from watching the Broken Skull sessions and just the way that Austin has conducted himself post career, the man is not just the beer drinking redneck that he portrayed on television. He has got an incredible mind for the business. He is not a guy who's going to come in and just hit a stunner and leave. Like, if he's dedicated to doing this, he's working to make sure that he protects that legacy that he's so protective of what's fans expect from Stone Cold Steve Austin. So I would anticipate you're going to see a feature length match that's going to place high on the card.
And if it is KO, Steen is going to, I don't want to say carry him, but Steen is going to make him look great.
It's a great opponent.
It's going to make him look great.
Despite the Kevin not having the name value of a Goldberg versus Austin, I'm not sure an Austin that's 20 years out of the ring with a Goldberg in his 50s is anything other than a train wreck, a disaster. And I think Stone Cold is, again, so wise to the business that he himself would know that probably is, as enticing as that is, that ain't the cat for me.
Exactly. You got to protect that legacy, and I think somebody, a talent like Owens, could deliver.
Take care of it
like that. Absolutely.
Amazing week in the world of professional wrestling on the news side. We'll move on to a few more normal, I guess, wrestling news stories. But the former Buddy Murphy, now using his real name, Buddy Matthews, is reportedly signed with AEW.
Is his real name Buddy?
His real name is actually Buddy.
I did not know that.
Buddy Matthews is his real name.
Oh, okay, cool.
So actually, Buddy Murphy sounds less like a WWE made-up name. Buddy Matthews sounds like the made-up name, but that's actually his real name. What are you going to do? Meanwhile, Quinn McKay, a sometimes performer and most often TV host with Ring of Honor, has signed with NXT. Apparently to join their announced team, perhaps on the new show NXT Level Up. Speaking of which, Level Up debuted on Friday night and is the permanent replacement for what was formerly known as 205 Live. Honestly, the 2.0 brand has so much talent, and who would have thought that they would have so much talent that one show is really not enough to highlight everybody. But if you think that the talent on NXT 2.0 is a little too old for you, go to NXT Level Up, because these are the men and women who are working their way up to 2.0. So, I mean, you're seeing the whole of the developmental system right now on display. And first episode actually had some really good action. And
sadly, I did not realize until we were talking a few weeks ago that 205 had not already been canceled. So
And honestly, it's a name change as much as anything, because 205 Live hasn't been 205 pounds and under in actually since really the advent of 2.0. It has been a subsidiary show to the NXT brand, and so it makes the most sense to rebrand it as such. More truth in advertising now. But yeah, actually, entertaining broadcast. So check it out if you get a chance. Much like with 205 Live, though, because of the Hulu agreement, you watch it live on Peacock if you catch it on Friday night. Otherwise, you have to wait. You can't see it on demand because next day rights belong exclusively to Hulu, which is kind of annoying. But it is what it is. Last week, Steven Regal, or as his real name, William Regal, well, I guess like not his real name. His real name is Darren Matthews. he filed his trademark for the name William Regal because that is what he went by previously in his wrestling career. That, and he also filed a trademark for Lord Steven Regal. When he began wrestling in WWE, that's when they changed his name, as they do everyone. So this is the first indication that since he was let go, that he's going to be returning in some capacity to the world of professional wrestling, or at the very least going to be capitalizing on his legacy, selling some t-shirts and that sort of thing. So go Lord William or Lord Steven Regal, because that man was way too talented to be worried about work.
Yes.
WWE, and this is odd when you hear about them hiring, but not only did they get Quinn McKay, but apparently they've offered a contract to former Ring of Honor Women's World Champion Roxy. Her real name is Carla Gonzalez. According to a new report, she took part in a tryout for WWE back in December when she still was the holder of the ROH title. And the report states she recently took part in a second tryout and was offered a contract with the company. And again, it's big news when WWE actually hires right now, but it's very clear though that she is solely, I mean, she's square in the demographic they're looking at. She's just 20 years old. She's been wrestling already 5 or 6 years, come polished out of, I think she joined with Booker T's reality of wrestling school there in Houston when she was 13. She has everything that's going to make you think that she's going to be big. So they probably see a huge upside and have signed her to a contract. For the first time since they were surprisingly released by WWE over the course of a couple weeks back in November, all 4 members of Hit Row are booked for the same gig next month.
Nice.
So you got Swerve, you got Top Dollar. Well, I guess they won't be using these names, but Ashante the Adonis and B-Fab, they're all reuniting for MCW Pro Wrestling. And this is maybe a sign that if they can work the indies as a team, maybe they'll land elsewhere as a team, because there was definitely a lot in that faction, a lot that could have. I think that the sum of the parts were greater than any individual parts.
Yeah, I would love to see them land in AEW. I thought I read somewhere that Swerve was actually heading to AEW along with Buddy Murphy or Buddy Matthews. That those are 2 confirmed signs for AEW that are coming up.
Those would be 2 excellent signings, because Swerve by far was the technician of that group, the high flyer. I mean, he's the one that had the seasoned Indies career, and but he could. I mean, just because of the swag that group had and the legit like street feel that they had of like seeing.
It was a great group. That
bring them all in, man. Let Swerve open the door, talk to Tony, and bring them all in, because that's one of those that
Cody and Brandy are gone, so there's some money to be moved around now.
I'm sure that with the executive contracts they had, they probably made $1 or $2. We'll end, Doug, with some congratulations. So first, congratulations to The Undertaker for being the first inductee named to this year's Hall of Fame. Who could argue with that selection? That's a no-brainer. Speaking of, though, this year's Hall of Fame, interestingly, is going to be a combo show with the final SmackDown before the 2-night WrestleMania event. So you buy a ticket for Friday night SmackDown, you get to go to the Hall of Fame too. Not sure how that's going to work. We'll have to see. Congrats also to Candice LeRae and Johnny Gargano on the birth of Baby Wrestling. This week. Baby Wrestling entered the world this week. Congrats to the lucky couple. And then finally, new world champ. Who would have thought that Zack Ryder, now going by his real name, Doug, I'm hitting all the real names, but Matt Cardona beat Trevor Murdoch last weekend to become the NWA World Champion. And I know you can say what you will that the NWA isn't what it was in its glory days, but credit to William Patrick Corgan. But they've done a lot to really rehab the NWA's image and legacy in the last few years. And there's no doubt about it that now the man who did more than just about anybody I can think of in recent memory to keep himself over, is now holding the most prestigious legacy-wise world title belt in all of wrestling. Isn't that amazing?
There is a beautiful place Cody could go now to reclaim those 10 pounds of gold, and who better to feud with than an actual friend of his in Cardona? And when did Cardona become a belt collector? Wasn't he just recently the GCW champion too?
Yeah, he's doing the Kenny Omega path. But man, you actually got my spotty senses tingling here. I'm thinking, if you want creative control, you go to a smaller place like NWA. Think that Billy Corgan wouldn't make you an executive there and let you work in Atlanta and a little tiny TV studio building what, I mean.
Yes.
Cody has the old school approach that his father had, which apparently is maybe part of there was an interview with Kenny Omega this week where he talked about the sort of co-founders of AEW, not necessarily having off-air friendships, that they're all like tight when it comes to being in wrestling, but outside of wrestling, they're very different people with very different visions. And so,
yeah.
Get the feeling that maybe as the older of that group, that maybe Cody's vision might be more inclined with what the NWA is doing.
And eventually, Cody makes the rounds on the indies, some ROH appearances, some Impact appearances, NWA champion, works that for about a year, then comes back to AEW, and then returns as a full-on heel and challenges for that championship. Okay, it is all work. I'm back on board now. Okay.
I knew he wouldn't admit he was wrong.
Nobody turns on Tony, man. What are you talking about?
It is crazy, Doug. We had to get all that news in because what a week. But it's time for the main event.
Let's talk
Rumble. You just had a pay-per-view.
This is the Royal Rumble. Hold on.
No, don't talk Rumble, Doug. You're late.
Let me just say what a poor choice for a premium live event emanating from Saudi Arabia. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Elimination Chamber.
So we're here to talk Elimination Chamber, where we had a almost fake beheading go on in the middle of the ring. We'll get on that later. There's a lot of bad visuals with this. And we, again, at the end of this, we're going to talk a little bit about this whole relationship and what we think of it. But yes, coming from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, it started at noon in Eastern American time. But it is the last stop on the road to WrestleMania. It's the first time the Elimination Chamber has gone international. It is the 29th of these events. And I will just say, I know we usually try to start these spoiler-free, and we'll get a little bit more in-depth match-to-match. But I will say that there's nothing that's going to surprise you about this one. Everything that people thought would happen, happened. Action-wise, if you wanted to just stick with some good action, watch the two chamber matches. If you're a fan of Lita, that was more fun than it had any right to be. But other than that, Doug, I say you could probably skip most of it myself. I don't know about you.
Most of this, and I think the chamber matches were the highlights.
Yeah.
But my goodness, these were like chamber matches on fast forward. They just boom, 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 boom. I mean,
so let's get to it then, Doug. Did you see the pre-show?
I saw part of the pre-show. I was out and about Saturday and decided I wasn't going to do like a replay later. So I jump in, just started at the pre-show and then kind of fast forward through the pre-show since it was Miz. So
Miz versus Ray was the only match after not having a pre-show match last month's pay-per-view. It was solid. I mean, I will just say that it was solid, but nothing that you'd need to go out of your way to see.
I do have a problem with the booking dynamic here where you have the baby faces double teaming and doing like a lot of heel nonsense, which of course leads, I mean, that had a very obvious point where Miz later teases that he needs a tag team partner. Of course, Q all the Cody is his tag team partner. That ain't going to happen for various reasons. We're looking at a celebrity work into WrestleMania for that. Probably Logan Paul, I'm thinking.
Oh, let's hope not. But yeah, you're probably that's definitely more likely than anything that we'll want to see. We'll say that.
Exactly. But I'm thinking that's all that match was. And that's why you had this weird dynamic where the baby faces were doing all these heel type, shenanigans and double teaming the actual heel. But yeah, I mean, like most of the matches, at least this one had a point, which was to forward a storyline going into WrestleMania. So
Well, we'll get to the main card then, because the very first match was
yeah,
Universal Championship.
out of the gate, and am I the only one that thought, oh my God, Roman Reigns is going to be beheaded because he walks out into the ring, says, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, acknowledge me. I'm like, did he just challenge for the throne? Did he? He's not making it out alive.
I will say that the audience did keep up their part of the deal all night long. This is the second of these that I have seen, starting with the last one that they had done. And I think that was actually Crown Jewel, but that was the crowd was way more into it than what we saw in the early parts of this relationship. We'll get into the specifics of the relationship.
Yeah, I agree with that.
This match was just they were very into almost everything through the night, but were hot from the start. When was the last time Roman Reigns jerked the curtain? I mean, like for opening match like that. Obviously, you knew this isn't a match that was going to go long. I put in my notes video game match because basically it was like someone hitting like the combo button to just like each do signature moves.
It's hilarious because I was thinking about Goldberg. And we haven't talked about this beforehand, folks, but I was literally thinking today about how Goldberg is like that one guy or girl. We all know them. They know like 3 moves on the game, right? And they just do those 3 moves over and over and over and hope for the best. That's Goldberg.
For his part, Roman did throw in 2 or 3 Superman punches, and I mean, it really was just like 2 guys sitting there just hitting like the combo button, and at least it was quick and decisive. So yes. I mean, for what it needed to be, it was fine. No surprises here. We'll move on, Doug, to what was the 29th Elimination Chamber match, and that ended up being the women's chamber match. We had Bianca Belair, Doudrop, Liv, Rhea Ripley, Nikki Ash, and Alexa, who it should be pointed out was still the same gimmick, and I had been really hopeful that this whole therapy thing was to cure her of the bad gimmick, but apparently they're sticking with it.
Sometimes there's just no curing a bad gimmick. Although I do think it was kind of cool. She had a swing in her elimination.
I love the swing. Okay, I did too. First thing on my note, liked Alexa's swing. No joke.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if you're going to be, you make the most of what you're given. If you're going to be that character, that was a cool little detail they had in there. I like this match. It was very fast paced. Doug, you called it right. You guessed Bianca. I got it wrong because I am a broken watch, and I'm eventually going to be right. But I guess I'm finally giving up. Like the Liv push that seemed like it was happening, and then maybe after Becky put her back down, it was going to be her comeuppance where she learns from that. She's still young. She goes and wins the Rumble. I predicted she was going to win the Rumble. She didn't. I'm like, all right, they're going to get her in that Mania match some other way to complete her hero's journey. They'll do it through Elimination Chamber, and it just deflated me when I saw her get eliminated. I'm like, well, I guess, sorry, Liv, you're just not considered main event material. But I mean, you can't complain about Bianca Belair, who obviously is main event material.
I really think the right person won this match, and I mean, this went about the way I thought it would. So, I mean, but my goodness, this was a breakneck speed in the Elimination Chamber, just like the men's. But
the crowd was, it should be said, really into Alexa Bliss. Like they really were into the Alexa Bliss character. So maybe that's the reason why it still has a shelf life in WWE. Or people just like her, I think. So I think you should, and it should be said too, that it came down to Bianca and Alexa. And when it got down to those 2 women, and it wasn't the plunder and a lot of the gimmick stuff you can do in the chamber, it was a really good final stretch when it was just down to those 2. They had a really great back and forth exchange. And so now, Doug, table set. we'll have a rematch, I guess, if you will, an actual match this time from SummerSlam when Becky returned and surprised Bianca and beat her in like 5 seconds to take the title from her.
Yeah, WWE is very bad with long-term storytelling, but I think everybody remembers how Bianca totally got screwed at SummerSlam.
Totally.
So hopefully she gets, a little bit of redemption at this year's WrestleMania, but we'll see.
So next match, Doug, we have Sonya and Charlotte taking on Rhonda and Naomi, and this one went to Rhonda and Naomi. And because Sonya had her arm in a sling, which apparently she didn't need, heel tactic, Rhonda agreed to fight this match with one arm tied behind her back, which the announce team, I guess, was being produced to say like every 2 minutes, with her arm tied behind her back, even though clearly her arm was not tied behind her back. Like, stop saying it. Just say fighting her with one arm bound, because I mean it was tied to her side, but she wrestled the whole time with her hand pretty much in front of her to her side, not behind her back.
And I don't know about you, but I'm thinking this poor referee who's trying to tie her hand behind her back, the whole time she's just bouncing around and jumping, doing that like Brock Lesnar jump around the ring, kind of bounce in place, kind of I'm ready to go thing. Like, okay, calm down, let the dude tie you up. So we can get on with this.
Yeah, Rhonda obviously is an extremely talented shoot fighter and has made the transition better than most ever could into the world of wrestling. She's not necessarily as seasoned a wrestling performer that she can wrestle with one arm believably. So maybe this was they over gimmicked themselves in this match to not necessarily work to their performers' strengths, it could be said. Nothing to see in this match. Really, this match is a WrestleMania preview, if you will, because I fully expect that Sonya and Naomi have to settle their issues one-on-one, and we already know that the table has been set that Ronda Rousey is going to be the one challenging Charlotte Flair in what should be a very entertaining match at the big show itself.
Absolutely.
Moving on, Doug. This is one that you got wrong because I had picked Drew, and because you actually didn't send me your pick last week when we had our show. Yeah, so I told everyone that you had picked Madcap Moss because I know what a big Madcap Moss fan you are. Sorry, Doug, you missed this one.
Oh, it's funny. I could not pick Madcap Moss out of a lineup if he was the only person in the lineup, but I know who he is now for that terrible, terrible bump he took in the match.
The only thing really notable about this one is that the man's lucky he doesn't have a broken neck or worse, because he's a thick boy, obviously big muscular guy, and to come down completely on his neck like a stack of dimes is it was very cringe inducing as you were watching from home.
Yes, it was.
But this was a squash. I mean, and they probably, I know they're trying to protect Drew a little bit, so it probably needed to be a squash. He doesn't need to be bumping around with his bad neck of his own. It helped to have Corbin get involved in it, but not crazy about Happy Corbin or Madcap, so it was hard to care about this. Although he did swing a sword around in the middle of the match at Scott's head, and I'm thinking, and I don't want to just play into cultural stereotypes, but considering the problems of that Saudi Arabia has with human rights records and beheadings and the like, it's like, this is not really a good look.
Unnecessary. I really like McIntyre. And again, this is something else that serves to push things forward to WrestleMania, because clearly all this did was set the table, like a lot of these matches did, table setting for WrestleMania, where we're going to see Happy Corbin and Drew McIntyre. I guess this is Drew's live, WrestleMania moment, but whatever.
I wish it was for something more meaningful than beating the guy with the bad jokes, but what do you want to do?
Yeah.
At least that one should be quick also, hopefully.
Yeah, I think so.
Next, we had a nice little match. This next one was a pleasant little surprise.
This was fun. This was fun.
A Raw Women's contest. No surprise that Becky Lynch retained against Lita, but this was the first singles match of any consequence that Lita's had in 16 years.
Oh my
goodness.
It's now.
Exactly. And I mean, Lita was, Lita comes from the era when women were not given the opportunities that they should have been. And those women are unfairly maligned because they're thought of in that era as like the like Revolution era, but they're not the ones writing and booking. And so whenever Lita got a chance to be more than just, the at ringside, eye candy for Edge or the Hardys, that lady could go and can still go. And here she is, 45 years old, and she did a great looking moonsault still from the top rope. Obviously it helps to work with someone of Becky's caliber. But Doug, I like this match. Lita looked good.
I've never have I thought of Lita as a diva. I can think back to her very first appearance when she was like S.A. Rios' ballet.
S.A. Rios.
Moonsaults. I'm like, who is this chick?
Yeah.
I've never seen a diva do that. So to me, Lita has always just been part of Team Extreme, never a diva. But this was fun. I enjoyed this.
I mean, we are wrestling fans, long watching wrestling fans, and if you have that long memory and appreciated wrestling from the past, there is always a joy in seeing some of your old favorites folks come back. Maybe Goldberg has been around a time or two too many for that to mean anything to even Goldberg fans, but Lita, outside of Royal Rumble here and there and some reunion appearances, to see her in a ring in a world title match, having sat out that long, I don't know how anybody booking it in the back could have hoped for or expected it to go any better than what it did.
Absolutely. I don't think that the outcome was ever in doubt. It was kind of like finding out how you get there. How does Becky actually win this?
Yes. In a way that to also help make Lita look good, because I'm sure, if you look at the age comparisons and things, that Becky Lynch is a long-term wrestling fan. There's no doubt she's idolizing Lita growing up. So this probably meant a lot to her to be able to have this match with a legend like Lita and to give her a big moment like that.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Fun stuff.
Well, we'll transition to not good stuff.
So,
the Usos versus the Viking Raiders, Doug.
Can you even say Usos versus Viking Raiders? Was this? I haven't read anything, but were they short on time? Was this always the plan? I don't understand what happened here. I mean, why even do this if? And all I could think of was, oh my God, somebody's going to get impaled on those like horns. When they throw like the one Viking Raider onto the other Viking Raider. So if you missed this, basically, Viking Raiders doing their raid entrance. Usos attack. It's a massacre before the bell even starts. The match is a non-start, and Usos just walk out. So, I mean, that was like 2-3 minutes. I don't know if that.
The only thing it could be, in my opinion, is they ran out of time. They must be on a tighter, like 3-hour schedule there. Then they, sometimes they can go 3.5, 4 here. But I know that they're trying to do tighter events. And as you said, the elimination matches were, boom, boom, boom. But this one probably shouldn't have been booked anyway. There was really no story. This one came together after maybe 1 week of programming, and so maybe they'll drag this out to Mania and it'll mean more by then. But I mean, I loved them when they were War Machine. I can't say that I'm crazy about the whole Viking gimmick that they've been saddled with, and but they're incredibly talented, and I think that they could have a great tag team match with the Usos. But it just needs to mean something more than it would on this night. So that's a lawful long flight to make, though, just to do that.
Truly, I mean, I like War Machine. I like the Usos too, but this just seemed incredibly unnecessary. Even if it is to advance more storyline, more table setting for WrestleMania, this was unnecessary unless they were just short on time or something. I cannot believe that somebody in the back thought this would be a good idea to have this 2-minute segment, because, like you're saying, that's not a lot of. Why fly to Saudi Arabia just for that?
16-hour flight or something. I mean, halfway around the world to go 30 seconds on TV.
Right.
But that does bring us to our final contest, and this is probably what they were leaving time for. But this is the men's WWE championship in the Elimination Chamber. You had the champion Bobby Lashley versus AJ Styles versus Brock Lesnar versus Austin Theory versus Seth versus Riddle. And Doug, you got this one right, my friend.
Come on, again, was there any doubt?
I thought there was another way they could go about it without title versus title, but I know that Paul Heyman, among others, was pushing for that at Mania, which is exciting. Does maybe think that I don't know if they'll ultimately want to unify. Personally, you have one world you live on. I would love one world champion per organization. Let's have the U.S. title and intercontinental titles be the titles of Raw and SmackDown, and have one world champion that goes back and forth between each show. But that's something
I would love that. I was talking to my nephew about this a few weeks ago. He had texted me and said, that Heyman and both Heyman and Reigns were pushing for a title versus title, and I was like, how great will it be once Reigns defeats Lesnar, unifies the titles, and then is going across all brands demanding that everybody acknowledge him. I love that idea.
The old school way of Ric Flair showing up on your weekly TV. Maybe next week he won't because he's somewhere else showing up on their weekly TV. Yeah. Having your champ travel, being a traveling world champion, is a part of the legacy of pro wrestling, and feeling like a world champion truly is such. That should be your prerogative. World champion, you can go anywhere you want to go because you're the man. It sets the table nicely. So I guess that's the long way of saying it got to where it needed to be, but the way they got there is like the match itself was good, but we basically had Lesnar squash an Elimination Chamber field after squashing a Royal Rumble field, and so it kind of takes any of the drama out of both of those events when they could have got there in a multitude of ways. I will say, though, in my notes, I loved Riddle stopping to take the selfie with Austin Theory, and everyone else is irritated. Yeah. Riddle, of course, was like into it, which I thought, of course, that's good character work. They started with Theory and Seth, which I would love to see more of that on a bigger stage with just the two of them. But man, that buckle bomb through the pod that Seth gave. That really did look rough. I knew that Theory would be the ragdoll in this one, but man, he overachieved.
But kudos to Theory for everything he did in this match. And I thought it was odd. I didn't realize that Lashley was injured. I hadn't heard anything about that. I guess he's been working injured for a while since Rumble, and now he's probably going to be out for about 4 months. So this was their concussion protocols are to take him out of the Elimination Chamber after that, and keep him off TV for probably the next 4 months, which means, unfortunately, he's going to now miss Mania to get his shoulder repaired. But I don't know. That's an awful long flight for storyline too, though.
I guess when he's the champion, what do you want to do to get that title off of him? I guess you could have had the match with someone else in there and vacate the title beforehand, but the Theory is money, man. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I will say that Lesnar kicking himself in and then beginning to rapidly eliminate everybody. Yes, maybe it is squashing the field a bit, but it still looked pretty cool. And then Theory trying to outrun and hide in a pod and escape through the top. I mean, every bit of that. I mean,
it was great work.
If Brock Lesnar was coming after me, I'm
climbing out of that Elimination Chamber.
That's a believable reaction. I mean, the only thing that I could possibly do is hope that a nut shot's going to take him down. I mean, they played it to perfection. But man, that F5 off the pod also looked like it was not a fun fall. But
absolutely not.
We got Lesnar walking out the champ. It's title versus title. That's kind of where we wanted to be. It just the last month and Roman catching COVID and all that maybe juggled things around in the way they got there, but we're officially there.
We're there. We're on our way to WrestleMania with a title versus title. My belief is, spoilers. I know we'll do a WrestleMania show about this closer to WrestleMania, but I'm already calling it. Tribal Chief wins, unifies the title, starts walking around demanding that everybody acknowledge him.
Oh, I thought you were going to say go to AEW and then take Cody's.
Roman Reigns to AEW, confirmed.
Mark it down. Doug said it here first. He's never wrong, folks. Never wrong.
Nobody turns on Tony.
So, watch the 2 chamber matches. good work in both of those. Watch the Lita match because we're all Lita fans and she did good. The rest of it, you can save yourself a good hour and a half because there really is nothing else to see and not a lot of surprises in the outcomes. But Doug, let's talk in general since we got some time here before we get to our final segment. These events, WWE has been putting on these Saudi Arabian shows since 2018. They came to a 10-year agreement is what they signed. I'm sure there's some extra years added on because they weren't able to perform during the pandemic. But this is basically an agreement for 2 shows per year. They bring in approximately $50 million in revenue for each one of these things. There's nothing inherently wrong. Companies are in the business to make money. Making an international agreement and taking this to an international audience for a large hunk of cash is completely in line with what corporations do. It's just who they're doing it with, right?
Right, right. Because there have been many of these things from Saudi that I've just not watched, just out of some sort of maybe, I don't know, principle. If Sammy's not showing up for him, well, I'm not watching him. Brian Daniels isn't going to, and I'm not watching him. This is my protest for them. I have watched a few though. I've got to say, I've seen them progress. I don't know if that's part of the whole PR because I mean, at the end of the day, this is a Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, $50 million, but it's still PR for Saudi Arabia and how they are progressive and not this kingdom that is very bad with their human rights. And
exactly. And that's the thing. That's where the ethical part of this comes in. You do 50 million. I mean, one of the best Summer Slams of all time is when they took it over to London and we saw Bret Hart in Wembley Stadium defending against the local hero and Davey Boy Smith. I mean, that's drama. That's international audience. That's engaging the rest of the world. This is $50 million you're pocketing to be a propaganda tool for a regime that is known for its human rights abuses. And it'd be one thing if this was, I know it's trying to show that they're modernizing, but nearly every one of these are just serving as a reminder that WWE can't distance itself from its business partners over there. I know that they themselves, WWE that is, tries from a PR perspective to say, look at the change. We're like, we got women on billboards now. We got women wrestling here now, but you can't overlook that they took the money back when women were prohibited from wrestling in Saudi Arabia. For the first 3 events of this whole deal, women weren't even allowed to be there. And WWE instead decided to go ahead and take the money and put the women's movement aside until their partners finally agreed to let them do it. And still, when they come out to the ring, neck to toe, wrapped in saran wrap, it still reminds you that this is not a progressive country.
So, and here's the thing too, because I was watching this with my wife on a Saturday afternoon, and we're talking about some of these like spandex suits these girls are wearing. Is this really any better than not showing any flesh? Because I mean, these are very tight, form-fitting uniforms these girls are wearing. These unitards they're wearing are.
Liv Morgan was full Britney Spears.
I mean, it's like, I mean, these might as well be body painted on, in some instances with what these ladies were wearing. Is that any better? I'm a bit confused about that, but.
And then it also highlights the hypocrisy because, I mean, this is a cosmetic business. Your body is your workplace in the world of professional wrestling, and men and women alike. So it's not, I'm not talking about sexualizing or anything necessarily. It's just like when you see that this is not how a Liv Morgan would normally dress, and she's like head to toe. And then the men come out and they're still in like, they're, like tiny swimwear. It just highlights the fact that women are not treated equally under the rules of this society and this regime. And it should be pointed out, the people of Saudi Arabia are not the government and kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So I'm happy that the kids and the families there get to see positive depictions of women and see these performers. It's just the fact that who's profiting and who's benefiting from this deal is not the people, it's the government and it's WWE, and it's a little bit of blood money.
And I was talking about this with my wife too. I really question whether like the audience we're seeing, because I think this is probably the first time. And again, I'm not seeing all of these, so correct me if I'm wrong, and correct me in the comments if Kevin can't call me on this. But this could be the most progressive crowd I've ever seen there. I did not see a lot of hijabs. Apologies if I'm saying that wrong, but no women in head to toe coverings. A lot of like blue jean t-shirts, no facial coverings whatsoever. With a lot of the females in the audience, it seemed to be and it seemed like a lot more families at this
yes.
too. So
and it's been trending that way. The first few seemed as almost, at least the ringside area was completely taken up by members of the royal family, who of course don't know what they're even watching and sit there not reacting or on their phones, or so. It was a weird atmosphere. So they've definitely improved that. But I mean, right early on in the relationship, the awkwardness of everything got highlighted when 1 year into the relationship WWE made, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia murdered a journalist and made worldwide news, and they were very much involved in his disappearance. WWE chose to go ahead and have their crown jewel event as planned, just not even 1 month after the death. So to act like it's because we're trying to bring women and progressiveness and open up the society a little bit doesn't really ring so true until the country itself can show that they've changed. I think that WWE should have not. I think that the murder was the perfect opportunity to walk away from the deal. Those grounds. Yeah. Now it's almost like, you waited way too late to show any moral backbone. So obviously they're going to take the money until this deal expires. But every time it happens, it leaves a bit of a bad taste in one's mouth.
Yeah.
But I will say, creatively though, the last two, they have done a lot over the last two to make them feel like premium live events instead of just a house show that happens to be on TV that people are going through the motions. The first, however many of these there's been, you could skip all of them. There was nothing notable that happened on any of them. No match of the year contenders, no big angles, nothing until the last one, which felt like an actual pay-per-view. And I will say, even though it wasn't the best of pay-per-views, a little mixed bag, even Elimination Chamber had consequences and some good action. So it felt like a normal event.
And I sort of joked about it before, but I do want to say I was just sort of joking, because I am presuming that everything that WWE does is still under very tight control, and it's part of Reigns' gimmick to demand that acknowledgement. But I am sure the Crown Prince signed off on, you can go ahead and say that, because otherwise, you're threatening the throne.
You're not saying that.
Unless the Crown Prince says, it's cool. That's part of your gimmick. I love wrestling. Let's do that. Because
maybe that's the one thing we all should say before we wrap this part of the show up, Doug, is that there was in this relationship another hiccup of misunderstanding that should be pointed out. There was an infamous incident a couple of years ago, right before the pandemic, where the men and women of WWE were grounded. And the official story from the Kingdom, as well as from WWE, is that there were mechanical difficulties that kept the plane on the tarmac. But there were numerous reports.
Hostage is what happened. Those performers were held hostage.
Which should really highlight, like, oh, crap, what's the next step if this had gone bad? Like, would you have disappeared as well? Would there have been footage of you going into a building and footage of you not coming out of the building? They've disappeared journalists and others before. So you're really playing with fire when you're playing with this relationship. And with that, I think we're in agreement on that one, Doug.
Yes.
All right. I may not be in agreement with you that Cody's still working this or that Madcap Moss is going to be world champion someday. But that we can agree on. Let's get to the big finish.
Let's do this.
All right, sir. What do you have for your?
So check it out. Since this is a very, very focused Elimination Chamber, I wanted to keep everything within Elimination Chamber for like, match, performer, botch. So let's just get botch out of the way first. Clearly, that Madcap Boss Alabama Slammer was a legit botch, and thank God this dude is not paralyzed from the neck down now. And no legit concussion protocols in place like our work concussion protocols that are Bobby Lashley. Everything I'm seeing says Madcap is good to go. Hopefully that continues because that was just nasty. It was. I thought McIntyre killed the dude right then and there.
It was rough. It was rough to watch. I thought it was I mean, you've seen guys that walked away. Well, you've seen guys not walk away.
Yeah,
you've seen guys carried away after that kind of thing. That's a paralyzing kind of injury. Possibility. Looked really bad.
How about you? What about your botch this week?
I did not keep it contained. So, but well, I guess in a way this does relate because mine's more of a big picture botch.
Okay.
I'm very happy that Lesnar and Reigns are facing each other. I'm very happy it's going to be title versus title. This is the match that everyone wanted. The way that we got there, though, is my botch of the week because on the way to get there, and I know you have to do things on the fly, but the treatment of Bobby Lashley and Big E during Black History Month, of all things, you talk about two men that deserve better. I know that Roman got COVID and right before day one, they had to switch plans up. But man, you talk about a fall from grace. Big E went from being a world champion, the next big thing, a breath of fresh air on the other brand, to being forced to drop his title to Lesnar unexpectedly because they threw Lesnar in his match when Lesnar couldn't take on Reigns. That changed everyone's WrestleMania plans and picture and the path to there, and everyone else picked up their path. And Big E quietly gets moved back to SmackDown, put back into a tag team, is no longer considered world title material, not main event material, and just has to grin and bear it. And it's just too talented of a dude, and I love where they were going with him, and I do not like what they've done with him since, and to a much lesser extent, because I know apparently he's legitimately injured. But if this was the direction you were going to go, then why have Lashley lose at Royal Rumble if you knew he was hurt? Why would have Lashley win and walk away with the belt? You could have kept it on Lesnar and got to the same spot.
So what I was reading about his injury, it actually happened in his match with Lesnar at Rumble. Yeah. So and he's been working injured ever since then. So but still, I fully agree with you that
let Lesnar go for the pin there. I know they're trying to, I guess, protect Bobby by not having him lose and take him out of the chamber match. They booked themselves in the corner and would have had to have him lose at Royal Rumble. But if he's going to be off 4 or 5 months, a loss wouldn't have hurt him, not to Brock Lesnar. Like, why in the world would you do that switch just 3 weeks later, turn around and do the switch again?
Honestly, who losing to Brock Lesnar? I wouldn't be hurt, losing to Brock Lesnar. Be like, okay, that tracks too. I'd be Austin Theory running from Lesnar.
How about Performer of the Week, Doug?
Speaking of Austin Theory, man, this kid is great. We saw him at the NXT live event at the beginning, which seems like 500 years ago, this great global bastard that we're dealing with. But, we saw him there. He was great. He's been great. This kid is just great, but I really loved everything he did in the Elimination Chamber, from going around getting the selfies with everybody in the chamber to his reaction with Lesnar and him being a bump machine and really putting a lot of other people over during this match. So, Performer, Austin Theory, man.
For me, I think some of the craziest things about the Austin Theory story is, for all we like to slag on WWE sometimes, and Vince in particular for being out of touch, Austin's getting this moment because apparently Mr. McMahon believes in him and is really high on the character. And here's a guy who's not a huge man, who's a really good worker.
Yes.
I'm like, this is the guy that, I mean, I agree, but normally I want to disagree with, like, oh man, why are you trotting out this 7-foot guy who doesn't know how to wrestle? And that's who you're wanting to get behind. Credit where it's due. Vince has got this one 100%. Like, this kid is money and should be shot to the stars.
Let's just hope he doesn't, lose interest, and find some new favorite toy that is 7 foot, or maybe his new favorite toy is going to be Cody.
Wouldn't that be odd
Yeah.
turn of events? My performer of the week, I am not even in WWE with this one, but I am going to MLW. We're going to the Indies, and I am going Richard Holiday and Alicia Atout. The Dynasty was one of my absolute favorite factions of the last several years in any promotion in professional wrestling. I think what makes the best factions is when you don't have like a NWO overrun where you have a bunch of good guys that are, top level guys, and then you fill it with a bunch of, filler. When everyone has a distinct character, when you can four horsemen the thing where everyone has their role and they all play their part, it's perfect. That's what the Dynasty was. It was started by MJF. You may have heard of him, but what made it good is that the core members of Richard Holiday and Alex Hammerstone were also equally entertaining in their own way. MJF goes off to greener pastures, bigger stage, and you just knew it was a matter of time before these best friends were eventually, as in wrestling has to happen, eventually you're going to see a fallout between Richard Holiday and Alex Hammerstone. It's just a matter of when. And of course, MLW plays the long game as well as any promotion in wrestling. And for years, there's been an antagonist relationship between Alicia Atout, who is the interviewer, who's kind of having a moment of her own. She's actually big in the world of music as well as a sort of an interview queen in the rock world. So she does the wrestling thing, the rock thing. She's got kind of a name for herself. And she's extremely talented. She kind of reminds me of an old school, like back in the day, like not that far back, but like Renee. And like She wasn't just there to hold the microphone. She had an opinion and she voiced it and acted more like a journalist. And Holiday will constantly give her crap. And, you're flirting with me. And like really just sexist, awful stuff, and was just horrible to this woman for years. So, of course, when it comes time for Alex Hammerstone now as the champion for his best friend to turn on him, it would be during an interview with Atout, who low blows him, and turns out they were in it all along together, and they just start screaming, "It was me all along." They're obnoxiously making out with each other. It was just done to perfection. I'm sure MJF was watching from AEW, smiling on what he had left behind when the Dynasty finally imploded the rest of the way. It was done in perfect fashion. So those two, kudos for a wonderful performance.
Speaking of imploding, I haven't seen this yet, but I caught a blurb about it earlier. I hear Guerrillas of Destiny out of Bullet Club as of last night.
Ooh, really?
Yeah. Check out the Impact pay-per-view that was on last night. And yeah, we'll follow up on that one.
Match of the week, Doug.
All right, sticking with Elimination Chamber. This one was hard. This was very hard. Especially, when I've got, Jay White on my TV for, wrestling in an AEW ring. But match of the week, with this one, again, I'm sticking solely with Elimination Chamber. And I've got to say, again, it was hard, but I have to go with the women's Elimination Chamber match if I have to pick one from there. Well, I don't have to pick one from there. I can do anything, but I've confined myself into this very narrow lane of just Elimination Chamber.
You booked yourself into a corner, my friend, because I thought, man, there's no way he's not going for Jay White.
Again, the right woman won. There was Alexa Bliss's swing, and Rhea Ripley looks great in all black. Totally. It worked for her. It's not that much of a departure from her regular, gear anyway. So it worked.
It worked. I agree. Yeah, the two chamber matches were the best matches of the night. I would go with you on the women's match. I didn't pick from. I didn't book myself in a corner.
Good for you. I did.
If you didn't watch NXT this week, go back and watch the finals of the Men's Dusty Classic. The tag team finals took place, and it was the Creed brothers, who remind me of an old school varsity club. They remind me of like the Rotundo and Steiner back in the day. I mean, like, they're legit. These kids have come a long way in a short period of time, are standouts at the Diamond Mine faction. But the Creed brothers versus, MSK, who won the whole thing last year. The former Rascals are, amazing. They put on a heck of a contest, and that is my match of the week.
Excellent.
And as you can see, Doug, we got our upcoming schedule here. We're going to talk next week about the history of women's wrestling. We're on the verge of Women's History Month, so we're definitely in the golden age of women's wrestling right now, but they wouldn't be where they are now without a lot of issues that a lot of women had to work their way through. And we're going to look a little bit of that as to what women were allowed and were not allowed to do, how the business was ran for women for many, many years, and what's led to the change in the scene we have today. And then, Doug, after that, we're going to be reviewing an AEW pay-per-view together live in the same room.
Love it. Yeah, AEW always, Revolution, always one of my favorite AEW pay-per-views. So,
and then in March, we're just going to WrestleMania it up, folks. We got a lot of special programming for you, all geared towards Mania. We are also on the road to WrestleMania. And now that we talked Elimination Chamber and you all watched it like we did, you all are too. So come back next week. Join us 8 o'clock Eastern time. I'm Kevin.
I'm Doug.
See you next week.
See ya. Thanks, everybody.